Hold up. Did Caitlin Clark just expose the real reason Stephanie White has been benching her? What you're about to hear is going to change everything you thought you knew about the Indiana Fever's locker room drama. And trust me, Sophie Cunningham has something to say about all of this that nobody saw coming. But before we dive into this explosive revelation, make sure you hit that subscribe button because what's happening right now in Indianapolis is absolutely insane, and you don't want to miss a single update. So, here's what just went down. Caitlin Clark finally broke her silence in an interview that's sending shockwaves through the entire WNBA. She straight up admitted that Stephanie White yanked her from a crucial New York Liberty game. And the reason why is going to blow your mind. This wasn't about rest. This wasn't about strategy. This was about control. Pure and simple control. Let me paint you the picture. Fourth quarter against the Liberty. Caitlin's absolutely cooking with 9 or 10 assists, scoring left and right, and then boom, she throws 2 turnovers in a row. What does Stephanie White do? She immediately pulls her star player off the court. But here's where it gets crazy. Caitlin revealed that White told her this was a quote-turning moment, unquote. Learning moment? Are you kidding me? This is Caitlin Clark we're talking about. The same player who revolutionized college basketball with her insane passing ability. But wait, it gets even more interesting. Caitlin actually smiled when she talked about this moment. And you know why? Because she knows exactly what's happening here. She even admitted there was a play where she got a steal. They're running in transition. Kelsey Mitchell is sprinting down the middle. And Caitlin literally had to stop herself from throwing that signature pass she's famous for. She said she looked at Stephanie White and basically told her how hard it was not to make that play. That's when you know something's seriously wrong with this coaching situation. Now, let's talk about what this really means. Because this isn't just about one game or one benching. This is about Stephanie White systematically trying to change who Caitlin Clark is as a player. Think about it for a second. You've got arguably the most exciting player to enter the WNBA in years. Someone who fills arenas, breaks viewership records, and brings a style of play that fans absolutely love. And your coach is trying to put her in a box. That's like telling Steph Curry to stop shooting threes or telling LeBron to stop driving to the basket. And here's something that's going to make your jaw drop. Just last week, Stephanie White was caught on a Hot Mic song saying that Caitlin's absence has been, and I quote, a blessing in disguise. A blessing. Your franchise player being injured is a blessing. White went on to say that it helped other players find themselves and made the team harder to scout. I mean, are we really supposed to believe that having your best player, your most marketable star, the person fans are paying hundreds of dollars to see being out is somehow good for the team? Let me tell you what's really happening here, and this is where it gets juicy. Sources close to the team are saying that White has been feeling threatened by Caitlin's popularity and influence. Think about it. When Caitlin Clark walks into a room, she commands attention. When she speaks, people listen. And when she plays, the entire basketball world watches. That's a lot of power for a second-year player to have. And apparently, some people don't like it. But here's where Sophie Cunningham enters the picture. And oh boy, this is where things get spicy. Sophie, who's become known as the Fever's enforcer and Caitlin's unofficial bodyguard on the court, had some very interesting things to say about this whole situation. After their latest game, Sophie was overheard telling teammates that, quote, nobody messes with CC on my watch, unquote. And when asked about the coaching decisions, Sophie just smiled and said she's way happier in Indiana than she ever was in Phoenix. But there are still some things that need to be worked out. Now, Sophie Cunningham isn't just any player. This is someone who earned a black belt in Taekwondo at 6 years old, played football in high school, and has become one of the most beloved players on the team precisely because she protects Caitlin Clark like she's family. Her Instagram and TikTok followers have exploded past 1 million each. And you know why? Because fans see her as the one person who truly is Caitlin's back when even the coaching staff seems to be working against her. And speaking of working against her, let's talk about this offensive system that Stephanie White is running. Caitlin herself admitted in the interview that she's been struggling with the system. And it's not hard to see why. White wants to run a slow, methodical offense that focuses on half-court sets and limited risk-taking. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark built her entire game on fast breaks, creative passing, and taking shots from the logo. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And everyone can see it except apparently the coaching staff. But here's the kicker, and this is what really shows you the tension in that locker room. Caitlin admitted that when she gets hot from three-point range, she completely tunes out Stephanie White. She literally said if she makes 2 threes in a row, she's launching a third one regardless of what the coach wants. Can you imagine any other star player having to openly admit they ignore their coach? That's not normal, folks. That's a sign of a seriously dysfunctional relationship. And let's not forget about the injury situation because this adds another layer to this whole mess. Caitlin has missed 11 games this season with 3 different injuries. 3. And every time she comes back, it seems like there's more tension, more conflict about playing style, more attempts to change who she is as a player. Her latest injury, a right groin strain, has kept her out for an extended period. And White's comments about it being a blessing in disguise just add insult to injury. Literally. Now, I've got to tell you about something that happened during Caitlin's return from her last injury that perfectly illustrates this problem. In her first game back against the Golden State Valkyries, the Fever got blown out 80-61. Caitlin shot 4 for 12 from the field. And you know what Stephanie White said afterward? She blamed it on poor attention to detail and questioned whether the players even knew the game plan. But here's the thing. How are players supposed to execute a game plan that goes against everything that makes them successful? This is where things get really interesting. Remember when Caitlin was at Iowa playing for Lisa Bluer? She was averaging over 28 points per game, dishing out assists like Magic Johnson, and taking shots from 35 foot out like it was nothing. Now, under Stephanie White, her numbers have dropped. Her shooting percentage is down, and she's openly talking about how hard it is not to make the passes she wants to make. That's not development, that's regression. And the fans see it too. Social media has been absolutely exploding with comments about how White is ruining Caitlin Clark. One fan wrote, quote, "Free Caitlin Clark from this terrible system," unquote. Another said, quote, "Stephanie White is jealous of Cesse's star power, and it shows." The sentiment is clear. People are not happy with what they're seeing. But let's talk about what this means for the future of the Indiana Fever. Because this situation is not sustainable. You can't have your star player and your head coach fundamentally disagreeing on how basketball should be played. You can't have your best player admitting she ignores coaching instructions. And you definitely can't have your coach calling injuries to your franchise player a blessing in disguise. Sophie Cunningham, being the real one that she is, has been trying to bridge this gap. She's been seen having long conversations with both Caitlin and White, trying to find some middle ground. But even Sophie, with all her toughness and leadership, can't fix a fundamental philosophical difference about basketball. And honestly, the fact that a role player has to mediate between the star and the coach tells you everything you need to know about this situation. Here's something else that's been flying under the radar, but is incredibly important. The Fever are currently 12-11 on the season, sitting 7.5 games out of first place. They're 5-5 in games without Caitlin Clark. Now, some might say that's not terrible, but let's be real here. This team was supposed to be a championship contender with the additions of veterans like Dana Bonner and Natasha Howard. Instead, they're fighting just to maintain a playoff spot. And you want to know the really sad part? When Caitlin Clark is allowed to play her game, when she's in rhythm and feeling it, the Fever are virtually unstoppable. But those moments have been few and far between this season, largely because of this coaching philosophy that seems designed to limit rather than unleash her potential. Let me give you another example that just perfectly shows this disconnect. In a recent game where Caitlin was actually playing well, she had the ball in transition with numbers. This is Caitlin Clark's bread and butter, right? This is where she's most dangerous. But instead of letting her create magic like she did at Iowa, the play was blown dead, and they ran a set play that resulted in a contested mid-range jumper. That's not basketball, that's basketball jail. The comparisons to what happened with other star players in similar situations are inevitable. Remember when Mark Jackson was coaching the Golden State Warriors and limiting Steph Curry's three-point attempts? Remember how that team exploded into a dynasty the moment Steve Kerr took over and said, "Let Steph be Steph," unquote? That's exactly what needs to happen here. But here's the million-dollar question. Will it happen? Because right now, Stephanie White seems dug in on her philosophy. She keeps talking about discipline, about learning moments, about playing the right way. But whose right way are we talking about? Because I can guarantee you that millions of fans tuning in to watch Caitlin Clark don't want to see her playing like a traditional point guard from the 1990s. Sophie Cunningham has been dropping hints, too. In a recent interview, she said the team is, quote, still figuring things out, unquote, and that, quote, everyone needs to be on the same page, unquote. Reading between the lines, it's pretty clear she's talking about this coaching situation. And when Sophie Cunningham, who's not afraid of anybody or anything, is being diplomatic, you know, the situation is delicate. The injury situation makes everything even more complicated. With Caitlin missing so many games, it's been hard for her to build any consistency or rhythm. Every time she starts to get comfortable, boom, another injury. And while I'm not saying there's anything suspicious about these injuries, the timing is certainly interesting, especially when your coach is calling them blessings in disguise. And let's talk about the psychological impact of all this. Imagine being Caitlin Clark coming off one of the greatest college careers in basketball history, Rookie of the Year in the WNBA, and now you're being told that the way you play basketball is wrong. That's got to mess with your head. That's got to make you question everything that made you successful. But here's what gives me hope. Caitlin Clark is a fighter. She didn't become one of the greatest college players ever by backing down from challenges. And the fact that she's now publicly talking about these issues, that she's admitting she ignores her coach sometimes, that tells me she's ready to fight for her style of play. Sophie Cunningham being in her corner is huge, too. Sophie has quickly become a fan favorite, not just because she protects Caitlin, but because she represents what Fever fans want to see: toughness, loyalty, and a willingness to stand up for what's right. When Sophie says she's happier in Indiana than Phoenix, part of that happiness comes from being on a team with a generational talent like Caitlin Clark. But that happiness is being threatened by this coaching conflict. The front office has to be watching this situation closely. They've invested heavily in Caitlin Clark as the face of the franchise. She's the one selling tickets, moving merchandise, and bringing national attention to Indianapolis. If this conflict continues, if Caitlin continues to be unhappy with the system, what happens when her contract is up? What happens if she decides she wants to play somewhere that actually appreciates her unique talents? Now, I know some of you might be thinking, quote, maybe Stephanie White has a point. Maybe Caitlin does need to learn to play within a system, unquote. And look, I get it. Basketball is a team sport, but there's a difference between playing within a system and having a system that completely negates your strengths. What White is doing isn't coaching, it's suppression. The other players see it, too. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, they've all been quoted saying things like, we need to play faster, unquote, or quote, we need to take advantage of our athleticism, unquote. Those aren't random comments. Those are players subtly saying they want to play the style that Caitlin Clark enables, not the style that Stephanie White prefers. And here's something that nobody's really talking about but is super important. The WNBA is at a crucial moment in its history. Viewership is up. Attendance is breaking records. And a lot of that is because of players like Caitlin Clark who bring an exciting must-watch style of play. If coaches like Stephanie White succeed in turning these exciting players into system robots, what happens to all that momentum? Sophie Cunningham understands this. She's been around long enough to know that the league needs stars who capture the imagination. That's why she's so protective of Caitlin, not just as a teammate, but as someone who understands what Caitlin means to the growth of women's basketball. This situation is going to come to a head soon. It has to. You can't have this level of dysfunction and expect to compete at the highest level. Either Stephanie White needs to adapt her system to fit her best player, or the Fever need to make a change. And given that Caitlin Clark is the face of the franchise and White is, quote, just unquote a coach, I think we all know which way this should go. But until then, we're going to continue seeing these moments where Caitlin gets benched for playing like Caitlin. We're going to continue hearing about learning moments and discipline. And we're going to continue watching one of the most exciting players in basketball being held back by a coach who seems more interested in control than winning. The good news is that Caitlin Clark is too good to be held down forever. Eventually, Her talent is going to break through whatever system is trying to contain it. And when that happens, when Caitlin is finally free to be Caitlin, watch out WNBA, because the Indiana Fever are going to be absolutely unstoppable. Sophie Cunningham will be right there beside her, making sure nobody, not opponents, not coaches, nobody gets in the way of Caitlin Clark being great. That's what real teammates do. That's what leaders do. And that's why Fever fans love both of them so much. So, what's going to happen next? Will Stephanie White finally see the light and let Caitlin play her game? Will the front office step in and make a change? Or will this tension continue to build until something has to give? One thing's for sure, this story is far from over. And the next few weeks are going to be absolutely crucial for the future of the Indiana Fever. Before you go, make sure you hit that like button if you think Caitlin Clark should be free to play her style of basketball. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this whole situation. Should the Fever make a coaching change? Is Stephanie White right to try to change Caitlin's game? And definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this situation is developing fast and you don't want to miss any updates. Trust me, what happens next is going to shake up the entire WNBA. Until next time, keep supporting our girl Caitlin Clark, and remember, some players are just too special to be put in a box.
Peace out.